Hi, I'm Will Adams, and this is Honeybrook Tools and Woodworks. There are a lot of things that I really love about what I do, and one of them is that I often have the opportunity to talk directly with my customers, whether it's through email or through a phone call. I'm a one-man shop. If you email or call, I'm the only person on the other end. And recently I got an email from a new customer who was interested in my Honeybrook Birdcage Awl, but he had a specific spot in his tool cabinet that it needed to fit in, and he wanted to know if the dimensions of this to make sure that it would fit nicely. Unfortunately, the way I make this particular handle, even if I shortened up the blade a little bit, it was going to be a little bit too long for the spot that he wanted. So he asked if I could come up with something that would work for him. And in today's video, I'm going to show you what I came up with and talk about some of the design considerations that I thought about when I came up with a new handle. So I'm going to move the camera, set it up over here at the lathe. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm here at the lathe. I've got a piece of walnut chucked up in between centers that I'm going to use to turn one of the new handles that I've come up with. And as I said at the start of this video, this is my original Honeybrook Birdcage Awl. And the handle is roughly inspired by the design of old turn screws that you might see with the kind of the round handle with the flats on them. So it's kind of loosely inspired by that. I have a lot of really good feedback about the design of this, how it feels in the hand. But for this particular application and the needs of the customer that contacted me, I don't have a whole lot of room to scale this handle. So in other words, I can make it a little bit longer, I can make it a little bit shorter, but because of the proportions between the ball of the handle and then this, what I refer to as the barrel, if it gets too small, it starts to look a little bit stubby and out of proportion. And then just from a functional standpoint, if it's too small, it's just not going to feel right in the hand. So I came up with a design. This is a vintage awl that I have. I don't remember where I picked it up, but I'm always picking up tools that I might be able to use as inspiration. And I showed this to the customer, and he generally liked the idea of this design, but wanted a few little tweaks. And this particular handle is a lot more scalable than my original handle. So I'm going to show you what I came up with. I'm going to turn one of those handles in walnut, and then once I've finished turning it, we'll head over to the bench. I'll install the blade, and I put a little decorative piece of brass in the end. This isn't finished yet. Yeah, and so I'll show you how I do it from start to finish. So let me get some ear protection on, get the dust extractor on, and we will go to it. So there's that, catches and all with the skew chisel. So this ends up being a little bit of a, somewhere in between, in design, in between this and the screwdriver handle that I came up with for the chip breaker screwdriver, split nut screwdrivers. And this is, I originally intended it as a screwdriver for the screws in the frog of a plane, but it's actually just a really handy apron screwdriver. Anyway, as you can see, this is kind of a marriage in terms of design between these two. The thing about this design is with the bulb on the end, I have a lot more flexibility in terms of how long I make the handle. I can make this part teardropped like it is now. I can make it a little bit rounder, depending on, frankly, what I'm feeling when I'm turning it, or if I have specific requests from the customer. But this is the design that I most often do and is on my website. So I'm going to let, as you saw, I put some oil on this. I'm going to let that sit and be happy for a little while. Then I will apply shellac, and I apply the shellac right here on the lathe. And then once that's done, I will see you over at the bench. Right, so I'm back at the bench. I've parted off this handle. And as I mentioned at the outset at the lathe, on all of my tools, all my handles, I put this little brass inlay in the end of the handle. And I've explained this in previous videos, but for those of you who haven't seen it, the origin of that is when I first started turning about 3 years ago, I struggled to part my handles off cleanly, and I always had some kind of a little, for lack of a better term, apology at the end here. And I started to just fill the hole that inevitably I seem to have at the end of my handles with one of these just a little piece of brass. It's a 1/8 inch rod. At this point, I could part these off much more cleanly, and it would take less time to actually insert these at this point, but it's become a little bit of a signature, and I also think that it's just kind of a nice, well, this is one of the very first handles I ever turned. It's a little scratch awl that I keep at my bench now, and as you can see, I think the little brass insert, it just adds a little something. It kind of finishes things off. So, long story longer, I still do it. So what I need to do now is just take this little awl that I mentioned, and I will, by eye, I can see where center is, and by eye, I'm just gonna start a little hole right there, and then I will carefully put it here into the vise. It doesn't have to be really tight. It's just, I need it to hold on to. And so there, we've got that little hole. And I'll epoxy that in. Actually, I'm going to do both. I'm going to put the blade in and that little decorative piece all in one fell swoop. So this is just a little bit of G5 West Systems epoxy. Works really well. It doesn't take a lot. And actually, before I do that, what I'm doing here is I'm just filing a couple of little grooves into the end of the blade, the Birdcage Awl blade, just to give the epoxy a little bit of something to grab onto. As you can see, that's setting up already, getting a little bit thicker. So do that, and then give it a just kind of drive that home. Quick wipe off of the excess, clean that up a little bit, and then this little guy just gets a little dab of epoxy. Right. So what I need to do now, as you can see, I need to clean up that brass a little bit. There are also some turning marks from where I parted it off. I'll just sand that real quickly, and then I'll touch it up with some shellac. I'm also going to polish up the blade a little bit. I'm going to do that really quickly off camera because you don't want to watch me sit here. You don't want to watch me sitting here sanding all this. So I'm going to finish this off. I'll come back when it's done, and we'll compare this to the original Birdcage Awl that I've made. Right, so this Birdcage Awl is now complete. I have come up with the original name of the Honeybrook number 2 Birdcage Awl because, well, it's the second design I've come up with. Just a couple final thoughts on this. From start to finish, when my customer contacted me about making him an awl, there were 2 primary considerations. The first is functionality. The tool has to feel good in your hand, and it has to do the job well. The second is aesthetics, and they're close. They're almost tied. As I said earlier, this original handle design that I came up with really doesn't lend itself to significant changes in length. Just the proportions would be wonky, and as the proportions get wonky, it feels not as good in hand, and just won't be as good a tool. So this one, because of the shape of this bulb, it's a lot more versatile in terms of if I need to shrink it up a little bit, I can shrink it up a little bit. This length is probably about as long as I would want to go. If it goes any longer, then it's really going to start to look out of proportion. So this is the Honeybrook number 2 Birdcage Awl from start to finish. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please click like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.